Alright y'all, first things first, welcome back to the channel, and second, I want to welcome y'all to a video that I've been wanting to make for so long. The reason I never made a hero ranking video is because I don't feel like I spent enough time playing with each one of the characters for it to be fair. But that's obviously no longer the case, or you wouldn't be seeing this video. Now, quick story time. Before I actually started doing YouTube myself, I used to watch Battlefront 2 YouTubers pretty much almost every day because I love Star Wars that much, and the game itself obviously is fun. And I never actually thought I'd be sitting here making my own ranking video just a year later. But I'm getting a little off topic. The main reason I'm telling you guys this is because throughout the years, I've seen so many different YouTubers do this ranking video, and one thing I've noticed in particular is they rank the heroes based off the game modes they play the most. Now, in no way is that me throwing any shade towards any other Battlefront 2 YouTuber, but I just wanted to say that because it made me sit back and realize that I play a lot of heroes versus villains compared to Supremacy and all the other game modes, so going into this ranking video, I most definitely did rank them based off how I use them in heroes versus villains. So what I actually ended up doing was scrapping the entire list, starting over and playing a little bit more Supremacy and Galactic Assault with all the heroes and villains that I could. And the funny thing is, it actually made me remember something that I used to say back in the day while watching other Battlefront YouTubers it's the fact that a lot of these heroes are tailored around different game modes. So when you watch this video, you're gonna have to actually watch it with an open mind and think about how all these characters play in all the different game modes aside from just the ones that you like playing the most. Now, before we hop into the video, as always, I want to make sure y'all have the chance to follow your boy on Instagram. We just passed 300 followers, I think about 2 or 3 days ago, which is dope. Let's shoot for 400, and without further ado, let's hop into the video.
Who's the man?
Time to find out.
Now look, the game's been out for about 3 years now, so I assume most of you have a pretty strong grip on all the heroes and villains that are in this game. And the reason I'm saying this is because I'm not going to spend too much time explaining why I chose these characters, because we could be sitting here all day. So just keep in mind, all the heroes and villains are going to be coming relatively quick. Now, at number 22, we have BB9E. If you played the game for long enough, you can kind of understand why I have him at this position. Now, I don't hate any of the characters in this game. I actually like BB9E. I think he's great for what he's supposed to be, which is a support character. But if you take him into heroes versus villains, he's getting stomped on almost every single time, unless he's surrounded by a decent team. But one thing you also have to respect about BB9E is the fact that if you take him into a game mode like Supremacy or Galactic Assault, he's actually really fun to run around and play with. Now, number 21, I have Finn, which is crazy to even think about because when this game first came out, Finn was my main. In my opinion, Finn was one of the best characters in the game. That Deadeye was getting almost everybody in the entire lobby out of the way in heroes versus villains, and if you took him into Galactic Assault, because they didn't have Supremacy at the time, but if you took him into Galactic Assault, he was absolutely melting those First Order Stormtroopers. But the thing is, throughout this game's lifespan, they started adding new characters, buffing other characters, and they kind of left Finn just sitting there. So Finn didn't get any worse, it's just the characters around him got so much better. Now, moving on to number 20 is going to be BB-8. He definitely had a learning curve for me, but I stuck with it. I played with him in Supremacy and Galactic Assault, and even a little bit in Heroes vs. Villains, and he actually ended up being not one of my favorite characters, but just a fun character to play with here and there. And in all types of different game modes, I've definitely ran into some BB-8s that put me in the dirt in a matter of seconds just because they're so good with him. So BB-8's not a bad character, but in my opinion, compared to all the rest of the ones on the roster, you can't really put him above anybody else, unfortunately. Now, moving on to number 19 is going to be Captain Phasma. Phasma's one of those characters that I feel like a lot of her hate came from the movies, so when the game dropped, nobody really even cared to use her. But all my Phasma mains know that Captain Phasma's not a bad character, especially if you know how to use her. Yes, she's obnoxious with that turret, but the reason she's obnoxious is because her survivability is insane. Now, moving on to number 18, we have Chewbacca. Now, Chewbacca's one of those characters that was never really one of my favorites, but I also have to give respect to the fact that in the wrong hands, he's just freaking deadly. But Chewbacca's pretty much in the same boat as Finn. When all these other characters came around, he kind of just got left sitting there, not really much happened to him, and other characters just grew above him. Now, I don't know why they didn't make his bowcaster like it was in 2015, but one thing that does make up for that is the abilities that they gave him. He has some nice abilities, but unfortunately, it's just not going to be enough for him to be any higher on this list. Now, moving into number 17 is going to be Boba Fett, another one of those characters I mained for a very long time. He's pretty much the villain's eye in the sky. Now, if you know how to use him and put Boba Fett in the right hands, he actually becomes one of the best villains in the entire game. But he's one of those characters that definitely has a strong learning curve, and in all honesty, I just don't think people gave him a real chance. In my opinion, I think Han, Iden, and Leia overshadow a lot of great shooters in this game, and Boba Fett's definitely one of them. Now, moving in at number 16, we have Grandmaster Yoda. Not much to really say about him. He's not a bad character, but in my opinion, compared to all the rest of the heroes and villains in the game, his abilities are pretty lackluster, but he definitely makes up for it with that small hitbox, his speed, and that ability that where he can just dash through you and you can't block through it. Not to mention, when you take him to game modes like Galactic Assault and Supremacy, he's pretty much just a little dart that you can't pin and you can't kill him. If you're trying to go for long kill streaks in Galactic Assault or Supremacy, he's definitely a character that I would recommend trying out. But for your average player going to Heroes vs Villains or Hero Showdown, there is definitely a learning curve that you're going to have to get used to with him. He has a really weird attack pattern, he's pretty easy to parry, but one thing that does throw you off as an opponent is that dash where you can't block it. It's absolutely crazy. All in all, he's a pretty solid character. I think they could have made him just a little bit more powerful just considering he is Master Yoda, but I do understand since Yoda is one of the fastest characters in the game, they have to nerf him a little bit by making him not as strong as all the other characters. Alright y'all, number 15, we have probably the most slept on character in this game. Now Bossk is a very unique and interesting character, but you just have to get over the learning curve and you have to start playing with him a little bit more in other game modes. Now yes, he's amazing in Galactic Assault and Supremacy, but what people don't understand is he's also insane in Heroes vs Villains. If you set those traps, combine them with the gas, and use their grenade launcher, you're gonna melt a hero's health in a matter of seconds. You would think he's one of the best characters in the game, but a lot of people sleep on him. And he's definitely a character that's starting to creep up on me and become one of my favorites. Alright y'all, number 14 we have Lando. There's not really much to say about him. He's a great character, love every single one of his abilities. I actually have nothing against him, but I just don't think he compares to the rest of the shooters that we have on this list. But with that said, one thing I love about Lando that not all the other shooters in this game have is he has that trigger happy gun. I really thought that was something that they were going to give to Han Solo because he's advertised as the sharpshooter, but they gave it to him as an ability and not as his default gun, which I'm okay with. And on top of that, for having all the abilities he has, I think he actually has some really good health regen for a shooting character. If you haven't already done so, I highly recommend you give Lando a try. Alright y'all, number 13 is somebody I wish I can place so much higher on this list, but I can't for the simple fact that he's so buggy. And if you didn't guess it, I'm talking about Darth Maul. The reason I think Darth Maul is one of the best characters in the game is because not only is he crazy in Galactic Assault and Supremacy, but he's also a character that you can carry over into Heroes vs Villains and be just as dominant if you're good at the game. If it weren't for the fact that Darth Maul was super buggy and his health was a little bit better and his blaster stamina was a little bit better as well, he'd be one of the best characters in the game. Now number 12 we have Emperor Palpatine. Palpatine is another one of those characters that I just wasn't interested in playing as when the game first came out, just because I was kind of bummed out that after seeing how crazy he was in Star Wars The Clone Wars that they didn't give him those double lightsabers in Battlefront 2. But whether you play as Palpatine or not, you have to admit he's one of the best characters in the game for the simple fact that if you put him in the right hands, you just can't catch the dude. And on top of that, he has some pretty insane abilities. The only reason I don't really like playing as Palpatine is because he has that same kind of jump as Darth Vader where he just falls so graciously and so slow that you just get melted up by all the shooting characters on the hero side. Alright y'all, the next 11 heroes and villains on this list are going to come even faster because I don't feel like they really need much of an explanation as to why I put them there. At number 11 we have Iden Versio. Now the reason I feel like a lot of people don't like Iden is for the simple fact that yes, she is kind of overpowered just like Vader. If you use that shock droid at the right time, that E11 just melts your health bar. Combine that with an unblockable secondary fire and you have one of the best characters in Star Wars Battlefront 2. At number 10 I have Rey, just because she's one of those characters you can easily get a kill streak on in Galactic Assault or Supremacy, and on top of that, if you switch over to Heroes vs Villains, that mind trick just devastates the enemy team, especially if they don't know how to counter it. She's a great one-on-one character in my opinion. I just wish her other two abilities were a little bit better, but hey, I can't complain. I feel like they did her really well. And at number 9 we have the one and only Princess Leia. Now she started off being one of the worst characters in the game, but after EA gave her that crazy buff and just left her alone, she ended up being one of the most broken characters in the entire game. I gave her a shot after that buff update came out and I actually ended up replacing Solo with her as my main shooter. Alright y'all, number 8 we have General Grievous, a character that I used to really suck with and to this day I'm not the best with. But with that said, just because I'm not good with him, I can still acknowledge the fact that he is one of the best characters in this entire game. I don't really find myself using his abilities too much in Galactic Assault or Supremacy because for a while, like I said, I only played Heroes vs Villains, and in that game mode his abilities were just so easy to parry that I got in the habit of not using them. But in Galactic Assault and Supremacy, if you use him at the right time, he absolutely just shreds the other team. Alright, at number 7 we have Han Solo. Now look, I know you might think that there are other shooters in the game better than Han Solo, but I really don't think so. And in my opinion, I feel like the only other shooting character in the game that you can argue with that is better than him is probably Princess Leia. But even then, I just have to give Solo the edge because the shoulder charge, the grenade, and that ability where he can just make himself shoot faster, they're all good for close and far range combat. And at number 6 we have Count Dooku, a character that's obviously tailored towards 1v1 lightsaber combat, but if you take him into Galactic Assault and Supremacy, you're also going to get some crazy kill chains with him. Plus you can just use that lightning stun he has to get anybody off your back and get out of a tough situation. At number 5 we have Kylo Ren. If you've played Battlefront 2, you know Kylo Ren is an all-around just great character to use in pretty much any situation. In both Galactic Assault and Supremacy, he'll get you some crazy kill streaks with that frenzy, and on top of that, he's a great 1v1 character, not the best, but if you know what you're doing, you're going to get a fight over relatively quickly. The only weakness Kylo Ren probably probably has is his health regen and the fact that his lightsaber swings are kind of slow and easy to parry. But with a character like Kylo Ren, the pros definitely outweigh the cons for sure. Now these next 4 characters for me were probably the hardest to decipher because I feel like they could all low-key be number 1. At number 4 we have Obi-Wan Kenobi. In my opinion, Obi-Wan Kenobi is probably the most balanced character in the entire game. Not only does he have the best health regen of all Jedi, but he also has some pretty crazy attack patterns, and they're actually really quick. Some of the craziest and longest kill streaks that I've ever gotten in Star Wars Battlefront 2 came from Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the reason being, he's one of those hit and run characters where you can take a lot of damage, deal out a lot of punishment, go hide in a corner for a second and regain full health, or at the very least a large chunk of it back. And if you bring him into Hero Showdown and Heroes vs Villains, he's also effective there because he's a very defensive type of character. He's always the character I recommend for new players that come into Hero Showdown. Now I'm gonna give you the top 3 characters a little differently. The 3 characters we have left obviously need no type of introduction. We have Vader, Anakin, and Luke. Now number 3 we have Anakin Skywalker. If someone walked up to me and said Anakin Skywalker is the best character in Star Wars Battlefront 2, I wouldn't have much of an argument for them. He was so great when he came out they even had to nerf him, and even then he's still one of the best characters in the game. That speaks for itself. He has the greatest damage output for any Jedi, which basically means he's going to be super easy to run up kill streaks with in Galactic Assault or Supremacy, and he's a character in Heroes vs Villains that'll clear your whole team if you're not careful. Now the runner-up for the best character in Star Wars Battlefront 2, in my opinion, is going to be the one and only Luke Skywalker. Luke is by far the second greatest all-around character in this game for the simple fact that he has good health regen, great damage output, and he can get out of a tough situation if he needs to with his abilities. He's one of the greatest characters to learn all the advanced moves with, the jump hooks, the back swings, all that. Plus he has a pretty decent damage output and his swing speed is the fastest among all the Jedi. Now you might be asking, if he's all these great things, why isn't he number 1? Because the number 1 pick is going to be Darth Vader. Darth Vader is just an entire force himself. He has great damage output, great parrying abilities, and his lightsaber attacks are just so weird that it actually works. And when I say weird, I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean weird as in his attacks are so inconsistent that they're really hard to parry if you time them the right way and don't spam. But I honestly do think the only argument that could be made for the number 1 character in this game other than Vader is Luke and possibly Anakin. That's why I said the top 3 is going to be a little different. But that's pretty much all I have for y'all today. If you enjoyed the ranking video, let me know by subscribing if you're new and also leaving a like. We're starting a brand new Minecraft series soon, so if you're into that, make sure you stick around and I'll see you on the next one.